Hello, welcome to Reframing Mindset Podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, now welcome back to Reframing Mindset Podcast. My name is Concert Brooks. I know this episode I talk about the ending is usually the hard part. And and this topic came up as now officially finished the backyard again, and this time it, this one had a different purpose as I might see to just kind of get rid of all the trash and all those branches and big trunk, big all the things that I can get rid of, so that mostly the backyard, it started to grow again, but it's mostly grass. If I'm going to deal with it anytime now, it's just grass and leaves that I would have to deal with, and then have maximum space to use to maybe plant stuff. So that's basically the purpose of this cleaning of the backyard. It's not really to do anything major, just to really clear it up to get rid of the main things, the big things that kind of will prevent it from making its maximum use. And as I said, this task took me what at 37 days, not 37 days, but yeah, and so it's basically 1 month and couple days, and so and 1 month and a week or so like that, or less than a week. So and what this experience kind of brought back something that I forgot all about. It was usually, and I mentioned it before in one of my previous episodes. So when I was doing it, and when I was cleaning the backyard, there were some days that the task was hard to do. But what happened was I wasn't at the end. So while some days were hard to do, when I finished it up and then clear it off, I could see the progress. And regardless, I was happy with the days. I was happy with the days that okay, yes, I made some progress. But what happened was when I reached the end was where all the big tree branches, the big all the stones, all kind of stuff were there. And that's when the hard part is. So it's like all the big things and such like that. That's where the hard part was. And it was really frustrating. Like some days I wonder like, wow, will I ever finish this? And that's I don't know why, but it's somehow, some way, the ending is always have the hardest part. So it's like you ever hear about the 80-20 rules, the 80-20 rule where they say 20% of people do 80% of the work. So if you have 100% of, so if you have like um 100 people employees working at your company, is majority of the time is 20 people that are doing majority of the work that basically bring the company forward. And that similar thing happened with the backyard where basically it was, if you remember from one of the previous episodes, I mentioned that I only have 10% left of the backyard left to deal with. And that 10% took me a good amount of days because all the big branches, like I've been moving logs, tree trunks, after moving all those stuff, not only cutting grass, but moving all those stuff. And it was really frustrating. And then what happened is after I finished that, then I have to be like digging up garbage, separating garbage from dirt, and because all those stuff to really basically so that they they this so that this time when it's clean, the garbage are gone, the trunks are dealt with. So I would there's still some trunks left that I could pick up. But what happened is that I got rid of most of what I could. So all they have to do is be burnt, and then all I have to deal with when it comes to the backyard is just the grass. Just the grass. And yes, and that's it. And then grass and then plant stuff. And then eventually what happens is over time maybe the stuff that I plant me just take over the grass so the grass doesn't have any space to grow anymore. So that's and while I say that I can't tell if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I guess I'll work to that goal and then I will and learn if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Although I don't really think I will get all of the grass, but what what will happen is I'll have moderate space to plant some fruits or plant some plants that can basically help with giving me food and such like that. And if I have doing that, I can help with world hunger, because I'll be planting stuff and I will have excess foods I can give to somebody else. And when I give them to somebody else, they are more full to help somebody else. So that's the goal when it comes to that's the goal when it comes to that, the planting and stuff like that. But as I said, the ending is always the hard part. And I remember reason why I kind of relate to this. I remember doing labs when I was doing at university, and the labs. What happened was the conclusion and the discussion. So that was the two last thing you have to deal with. So you have all of the lab, and you have the two last part was the discussion and the conclusion. The conclusion is usually one simple sentence concluding, but that conclusion is always somehow, somewhere it's always very hard to really come to to really conclude. And what happens is you have to do the experiment and get all the stuff, um, and then to know what you're working with. So how the labs go is that you're doing an experiment and then you have to understand why you're doing the experiment. When you're doing it, then you get the results. So you have to understand why you're doing the experiment. What are the expected results? What are the results you think you're supposed to get? And then when you see what you're supposed to get, when you say what you're supposed to get, that's your hypothesis. That's basically you saying, okay, this is what's supposed to happen. So when you get the results now, you have to look and see, okay, did I get what I said I was going to get, or if I didn't get what I supposed to get. And if I didn't, if I get it or I didn't get it in the discussion, I have to explain why I got what I got and why I didn't get what I get. And then at the end now, they will conclude. And the discussion and the conclusion is usually very hard because you don't know what you don't know what you'll get. And when you get the results that you do, then now you have to basically do your research and understand why you get those stuff. And what happened is when I reached the university level, it's really some more research that you have to do. You can't just do those simple research and just you have to do some more research. And that the conclusion is just a simple sentence, but it always takes the hard part because why? The discussion, bro. The discussion is usually so is that it's the two last section that and those two will usually take up majority of the time. And the top part is usually just relatively easy, relatively easy because they're straightforward. And but the last two is always the hard part. So I've been no stranger to this concept, and this doing the backyard kind of just reconfirm that for me, reconfirm that for me, and it's you, the listener, you're supposed to be able to relate to this because there's a lot of things you may start, and then when you see you're right at the goal. Like for example, um, Let's see again. Let's see. I think racing. Oh, let's see. When you're jogging and you say, okay, I'm going for a 20-minute jog, and you're jogging and you're starting and you say yes, and you're listening to some music, and then what happens was after a while, you say, okay, let me see how many time that have passed. When you check your time, you just 5 minutes that's passed, and it's like what? It feels like I've been running for a long time. And so that's basically the essence that I'm trying to give you, where the ending make it feels like it's a never ending journey. That's essentially what this topic is trying to explain. Like the ending of certain things usually make it just feel like an endless journey. Gladly I'm finished, and when I see the finished product, it made me forget all about that pain and you know I struggle that I had to deal with to finish it. But I still can remember those days when I look at trying to move those stuff and be like, wow, bro, I really will this ever end? You know? Yeah. And there's a next episode that I think maybe going to come after this or next or another one. Going to tell you why I end up actually finishing it earlier than I predicted it to be, because that episode is going to go into detail, because if I never did what I did, which that episode going to explain, I would never have finished. I would still be doing it right now. So that's basically it for this episode. I try to give my best. Others give you the best. Um, what should I say? Explanation about that topic. But from the topic, when you see the topic name, you're supposed to can get the gist. You're supposed to can get the gist. It's not me alone that I'm sure it's not me alone that always say, "Oh, the ending always make it feel like an endless journey." Yeah, so that's basically it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and look forward for the next episode. Mhm.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.
But sometimes you just need to change your strategy, you know, or change your approach to the problem, and you may have, as I said, most of these things that I'm up, it's wild. Some of these things that I'm talking about now, I see how I learned them in school, and now I'm just giving you a real world application of it. So basically, before I will give you the school term. So basically, when we're in school, usually you get like um you get some formula to use. So you basically say, okay, to do a certain thing, you can use this formula. But if this formula doesn't work, then you can use this one. So he said, depending on the situation, I use the appropriate formula. So you say, okay, so if the formula